I prayed, Lord, I want to honour my mum and dad, as your word says. And the Lord spoke to me very clearly and said, take your mum home and tell her about me. So that's exactly what I did. I took her home, and Phil, my friend, was at home, and I sat her down in the kitchen. I'd never been able to really talk to my mum much about the Lord, because I had a very strained relationship with my mum. She was always quite difficult, very difficult, and always sort of bitter and angry about issues. And I can remember as a child, Mum and Dad were very often having arguments and upsets, mainly about my brother's sister. Something had happened during the war, and my mum was treated very badly by my dad's sister. And that had caused, I think, my mum to be quite a bitter person. And so as a Christian for many, many years, I never had a very close relationship with my mum at all. So when I took her home, I just sat her down and just told her plainly about the love of God. And as I started to really explain what Jesus had done, not only for myself but for her, she really softened. And and I've never seen my mum so soft and open. And then she really opened up and told me that when I was born, I said that my mum nearly died. She said she had a dream, and in that dream she seen someone who was all shiny and bright. And I was able to explain to her that that was the Lord, that was Jesus, just speaking to her. And she opened up and she really was seeking and listening to all that I was saying. And I was able to invite her to meet Jesus. And it was a very emotional, wonderful time to lead my mum to the Lord. Now, I took her back home to the nursing home where she was, and the next day something absolutely amazing happened. I went and knocked on the door as I would normally do, and two of the staff came to open the door, and one was saying to the other, I don't know what's up with Molly today. She's a completely different person. And the other one said, oh, I can't believe that. She's the most awkward one we've got here. And yeah, my mum certainly was an awkward person. And but as soon as I went in, I was expecting to see something different. And I went into her room, and she was completely changed. A lovely, soft, easy, relaxed, and I just sat next to her and chatted a bit more about the Lord, and she was really open. And then I said to her, now, Jesus has forgiven you everything that you've ever done. He's given you a clean sheet. And his word says that we need to be in a place of forgiving others who have hurt us. And I said, now, I want you to come to a place of forgiving Dad's sister. And she said, I already have. And that's what changes us. That's what changes. When mankind meet God, then something has to change. And it's certainly not God. We have to change. And my mum had changed. The truth of the gospel and the love of God had softened her heart, and she'd completely changed. And now she had a relationship with the Lord. On my last video, I was talking about how my mum come to know the Lord. So that was part 1. And the title of part 1 and part 2 really is Don't Give Up. Perhaps you've got some elderly parents yourself, or elderly friends who are getting on in years, but don't give up, because my mum and my dad come to know the Lord when they were getting on towards their 80s. So I want to encourage you to keep praying for them and keep loving them and keep being good to them, because God's got a plan for them and he wants them to come to know him, and he can use you to do that. So I want to share with you now how my father come to know the Lord. Now, my father was in a special secure home because of his Alzheimer's, and he began to get a little violent. And that was very difficult for the family, and very difficult for all of us at that time, because we've never had anybody in our immediate family who suffered from this illness. And my dad was slowly getting worse, and was getting to a place where he didn't even know who I was at one stage. And that is quite difficult for us to handle when those sort of things happen. But with prayer, it's amazing what God can do. My dad was very agitated most of the time when we used to go and visit him. I mean, one day I was at home and the phone went, and it was my dad on the phone, and he very calmly said, "Oh, Rob," he used to call me Rob rather than Bob, but he said, "Oh, Rob, can you come and see me?" And I was really taken aback by that. It really shocked me, to be quite honest. And my friend's wife, Pat, happened to be there, and I said, "Let's get in the car and go and see Dad. He wants to see me." So we got in the car. It wasn't very far. Went down the road and went into the home. And when I got into his room, he was just sat in his chair, completely calm, completely normal. And I went and knelt in front of him and just started chatting to him. And it was just amazing. And then I told him about the love of God. I had said other things to him before, but this time I just shared the love of God with him, what Jesus had done for him on the cross, and how much God loved him, and what he needed to do to come to know him. Because the bottom line is really our sin separates us from God. And I was able to explain all that to my dad. And then I just simply said, "Would you like to come to know him?" And he said yes. And I started to pray with him, but I got so emotional that I just couldn't continue. So Pat, my friend's wife, stepped in and prayed with him, and he gave his heart to the Lord. You know, these things are amazing. When we don't give up, when we can continue to pray, it's then that God can step in. And he stepped in an amazing way with my father, because of his Alzheimer's was so advanced at that stage. And he wouldn't have thought that he'd ever come back to a place of sanity in that sense. But God just opened that window of opportunity for him to come to know him. And that's what God can do. That's what God can do. And that's what's so amazing. His love is there right the way through. And I want to encourage you that if you're in the same situation I was, that pray, and God will open up an opportunity for those to come to know him. And when we left, we had to go down and find a nurse to let us out of the home, because he was in a secure unit. And so when the nurse came, I said to Dad, I said, "Tell the nurse what's just happened and what you've done." And he said, "I've just become a Christian," and he burst out into tears. Now, this was really, really precious. God's heart, my dad's heart was so soft, and he really knew that this Jesus was real. And each time I used to go to see him, I used to remind him, even though he couldn't remember much else, I used to remind him, "Can you remember when you come to know Jesus?" And he always said yes. And these are miracles. These are things that God can do. So don't give up. Just don't give up. carry on praying for those around you.